Imagine walking into a restaurant, you're starving, and the waiter comes to you and says, "We have two options, chicken or beef." You ask him, "What about fish, pasta, vegetarian?" He looks at you dead in the eye and says, "Sir, chicken or beef?" That's American democracy. 250 years ago, a group of the smartest men in the room sat down and designed what they believed would be the greatest political system in human history. They read every book, studied every empire that rose and fell, and they were terrified of one thing above everything else: tyranny. They didn't want a king, they didn't want one man or one group to ever have total control. So they built a system of checks and balances so complicated it would make your head spin. And for the most part, it worked. But they made one mistake. One small, almost invisible mistake that nobody talked about at the time. And that mistake locked America into two political parties forever. To understand how this happened, you have to go back to the very beginning. When the founders designed the election system, they had to answer one simple question: how do we decide who wins? And they went with the most obvious answer: the person with the most votes wins. Simple. Clean. Makes sense. In each district across the country, you vote, you count the votes, and whoever has the most wins the seat. They call that first past the post. And on the surface, it sounds completely fair. But here's where it gets interesting. In 1951, a British economist named Maurice Duverger was sitting with this exact system in front of him, and he noticed something that now carries his name: Duverger's Law. And what it says is this: any country that uses first past the post voting will over time almost always end up with exactly two dominant parties. Not 3, not 10, 2. It's not a coincidence. It's not a cultural thing. It's math. Here's why. Let's say you live in a district and there are 3 candidates: a moderate Democrat, a moderate Republican, and an independent who you actually love. His ideas are brilliant. He speaks to you. You think he's the best candidate by far. But everyone around you knows he probably won't win because he doesn't have the big party machine behind him. So you think to yourself, if I vote for him and he loses, I basically wasted my vote. And the candidate I hate the most might win because my side was split. So what do? You vote for the lesser evil. You vote for the Democrat or the Republican, whichever one you dislike less, and so does everyone else who liked the independent. And just like that, the independent gets maybe 5% of the vote and disappears. Not because people didn't like him, but because the system punished you for voting your conscience. This happens every single election, in every single district, across the entire country, for over 200 years. And what it produces is a self-reinforcing trap. Voters don't vote for third parties because they can't win. Third parties can't win because voters don't vote for them. And the two big parties sit in the middle of this loop, perfectly comfortable, because the system was accidentally designed to protect them. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but surely at some point someone tried to fix this. Surely someone looked at this and said, "This is insane, let's change it." And you'd be right. They did try. In fact, there's a system called ranked choice voting that solves this problem almost entirely. Instead of voting for one person, you rank your candidates: first choice, second choice, third choice. If your first choice doesn't get enough votes, your vote automatically goes to your second choice. Suddenly, you can vote for the independent you love without feeling like you're throwing your vote away. Adopted it, Maine adopted it, New York City tried it, and in every place it was used, something remarkable happened. Voters reported feeling like their vote actually mattered for the first time in their lives. Candidates started talking to people outside their base because they needed to be someone's second choice too. The conversation changed. But here's the problem. The people who have the power to adopt ranked choice voting nationally are the same people who benefit from the current system. The Democrats and Republicans control Congress, they control state legislatures, they write the election laws, and you don't burn down the house you live in. Every serious push to reform the voting system at a national level has been quietly killed, defunded, or buried in committee by the very people whose careers depend on nothing changing. It's not a conspiracy. It doesn't need to be. It's just incentives. When the system works for you, you don't fix it. And this is where it gets really dark, because the two-party system doesn't just affect who wins elections, it affects how Americans think. When you only have two choices, everything becomes binary. You're either with us or against us. Every issue, no matter how nuanced, gets shoved into one of two boxes: healthcare, climate change, immigration, education, the economy. Pick a side. No room for complexity, no room for it depends, no room for ideas that don't fit neatly into the platform of one of two parties that were largely shaped by the politics of the 1960s. And what happens to a population that's been told for generations that there are only two ways to see the world? They stop talking to each other. Studies show that Americans today are more politically segregated than at any point since the Civil War. Republicans and Democrats don't just disagree on policy anymore. They disagree on facts. They live in different neighborhoods, watch different news, and increasingly believe that the other side isn't just wrong, but evil. And the two parties don't just allow this division, they need it. Because if you're not scared of the other side winning, you might start asking uncomfortable questions about your own side. Fear is the product, division is the business model. There's a moment that I keep coming back to. In 1796, George Washington gave his farewell address. He was the only president in American history who ran without a party, and he used his final speech to warn the country about exactly this. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, that political parties would eventually become so powerful that they would use the government as a tool to serve themselves rather than the people. He called it the worst enemy of democracy. He begged them not to go down that road. They didn't listen. Two parties formed almost immediately after he left office, and they've been there ever since, changing their names and their platforms, but never their grip on power. So the next time you're standing in a voting booth, feeling like you're choosing between the lesser of two evils, remember that this feeling isn't an accident. It wasn't inevitable. It was the result of one small design flaw, and 200 years of powerful people deciding that fixing it wasn't in their interest. The restaurant has always had more than chicken and beef. They just never updated the menu.